Hi, everyone. We've set up this Being an Engineer podcast as an industry knowledge repository, if you will. We hope it'll be a tool where engineers can learn about and connect with other companies, technologies, people, resources, and opportunities. So make some connections and enjoy the show.
I've always wanted to face my fears. And Toastmasters has been an incredible opportunity for me because it truly does require you to get up in front of people and speak.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we're speaking with Mac Fortune, who holds a bachelor's degree in engineering management with an emphasis on mechanical engineering. Mac has grown a successful career in the medical device industry with focuses on medical imaging, orthopedic trauma, and artificial intelligence. He also has experience building, training, and managing sales teams and managing product portfolios. Mac, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Aaron, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to this conversation.
All right. So back in your college days, when you had to decide what major to sign up for, what made you choose engineering?
Well, I'm sure like many of the engineers listening to this podcast was always very hands-on, Legos as a kid, loved to just build things. Obviously, that's the mechanical side. I have tried to dabble with electrical wiring and things like that, but usually electrocute myself. So realized that more the mechanical construction, building, understanding the different materials and how they fit together at a very young age as, college, middle school, high school, leading into college, I should say. I just knew that engineering really was where my mind was. Wasn't very successful in English. Always had more, of a struggle writing papers when they had minimum word counts and things like that. But when it came to math and the creativity, construction side of things, I was always very successful. So going into college, I felt engineering as well would be a great, degree to have to separate myself from others maybe in the field as well. Many of my friends were in business, communications, things like that. And I thought many of those skills you could learn when you went out into the field, where really setting yourself up to have more of a technical background in the world that we live in these days, I thought would really help separate me as I started to look for jobs.
Oh, that's a really good insight. A lot of the skills you can learn on the job, but engineering that would be a tough one to learn on the job. Yeah, very cool. All right. Well, your last few roles have been as a product manager. I don't think that we've had anyone on the show today. It's been 185 or so episodes, and I don't think we've ever had a product manager. So I've been excited to talk to you about what that is and what you do. Can you just tell us a little bit about what a product manager does?
So a product manager, it's interesting. I've been asked what a product manager does from a number of people. And I think it could vary quite a bit based on the size of the company. A larger company has downstream, upstream, product managers, project managers. It could be separated into many different areas, where I've always worked with smaller companies. So as a product manager with a smaller company, a lot of that is downstream marketing, figuring out pricing strategies, the content, the marketing material, delivering the education to the sales representatives, creating relationships with key opinion leaders, really understanding the voice of the customer as well. Then upstream marketing as well would be long-term, the business plan of a product or new product development. So product managers, really, they're very closely involved in the marketing department, but their expertise comes into play with the product. They need to be the product expert. They want to be the person where others in the field go to them when they have, questions about how the product works. They want to be the person that takes the feedback from the voice of the customer to figure out, okay, R&D, these are new features, functions that we need to look into. Where you get that feedback, you analyze it. With medical device, especially in Europe now, it's actually a mandate that quarterly you gather a significant amount of data, you analyze that, so that way you could show the regulatory bodies that you understand what the market wants, you understand what your customers are saying, what they like, what they don't like, etc. Where that product manager really needs to be that individual that's communicating with the field, knowing what people like, along with internally with R&D to be able to transfer that information of, let's prioritize this feature, this function, or let's deprioritize that one because, it's really not being asked for as much as we originally thought.
That's cool. So it sounds like very much a business kind of role. It sounds like a perfect role for someone who has that entrepreneurial spirit, maybe for whatever reason doesn't quite want to go out and on his own or her own, but wants to exercise that entrepreneurial spirit. And I know that we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, but it sounds like a perfect fit for you based on what I know of your background.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, another key part is communication. A product manager, communication is one of the key things. I think that could relate to a project manager as well. But a product manager needs to be able to communicate between multiple departments in a company. Very frequently, there could be interdepartmental walls where sales just sends an email over to R&D expecting something to get done in a week or two, where R&D says, no, we've got all of these other projects, all of these other priorities. You don't understand the man hours, etc. Where that's where that product manager can come and play, communicate with sales, communicate with R&D to help everybody work a little bit more closely together, to be aligned to hit long-term goals. Because again, R&D sales may not understand the regulatory implications as well. So that's where product manager has to really be able to communicate with multiple different departments, understand the way they think, to allow things to come together, a new product to be, sent to market, new upgrades, changes to a product, to be released much more efficiently, and for those to be prioritized as well based on the input of these different departments, because they all work differently. They all think very differently as well.
We've been looking for a marketing engineer recently here at Pipeline and have not had many hits on that job posting. And now I'm wondering, maybe I should put an ad out for a product manager, even though what I want them to do is not manage a specific product, but it sounds like a product manager's set of skills is exactly what I'm looking for. And maybe that term is a little bit better understood out there versus a marketing engineer, which I hadn't really heard of before. So maybe a lot of people see that and they're like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, no, I think that could be a good strategy, especially working with the right individual that has worked with a smaller company, because I think that really, again, sets people apart, because you have to wear multiple different hats. You have to be, quick to adapt, pivot, as they say, based on a change from executive management, based on a change in the field, where a product manager, you are marketing, but you have a little bit of product expertise. I think a lot of product managers have a technical background, and that may not be the majority, but a good amount of them do. So I think in your shoes, a marketing engineer, that is a unique term, where a product manager may be a better fit for you.
Yeah. Amen. Okay. Well, one of the great things about this podcast is we get to learn about all the different kinds of jobs that an engineer can perform. And to be honest, before I started the podcast, I don't think I fully appreciated how many different roles an individual with an engineering degree can hop into and perform effectively. How did your engineering degree prepare you to be a product manager?
So it's interesting. When I graduated from college with an engineering degree, I think it's more my entrepreneurial background. I never wanted to follow your typical path of an engineer. I wanted to look at what other opportunities were out there. I've always wanted, as you said earlier on, to be an entrepreneur. I've got a few ventures down, that road. But nonetheless, when I started looking for jobs, I found a smaller company, a startup, and I thought it was a great fit because, again, as I've said, I love working with smaller companies. It allowed me to really work closely with R&D, leverage a bit of my technical background, but then it gave me that opportunity to continue to learn as the company grew, to take on new roles as well as the company changed. I went in as a sales representative, then became a trainer for independents. Then I became more of a sales type manager / product manager because the product was evolving very quickly. I was working with the different key opinion leaders, obtaining the voice of the customer, bringing that information in. So I loved having that technical background, but then it gave me that opportunity to work with a small company, really take on a lot of different roles. I love that opportunity of continually learning. I don't think I'd ever do very well with a larger company because frequently you get stuck in a box. That's all you do. And if you need to do anything else, you go talk to that person, where I think it could stifle somebody's development, growth, both, career-wise, along with just pure, mental growth and advancement.
Yeah, I was thinking just a week or two ago about the end of my college career, and I had an interview with this company. I think it was an engineering position for designing automotive wire harnesses. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't super interested in the job, but it was the first opportunity I'd had to even interview with anyone. And so I thought, I'll take it and maybe I'll learn something. And who knows, maybe I'll be surprised and it'll be super exciting mm-hmm. or whatever. Anyway, I flew out there. It was in like, I don't know, where was it? Omaha or Idaho or somewhere out kind of in the middle of the boondocks. And it was not an interesting job, and I didn't give it that much thought. But when I was thinking about this just the other week, I thought, man, what if I had taken that job? What if I had actually wanted to do that? And I tried it out, and being young and naive and not really realizing how jobs can set a trajectory for the rest of your career, I would have been miserable. It was this like big corporation, and I would have been stuck in a box just designing wire harnesses every day. No offense out there to any of those who are designing wire harnesses for a living. There's something for everyone, I guess, but that would not be for me. I love being able to wear all these different hats and work in a small company. So you talked about this entrepreneurial spirit that you have, and you've done a few things. Can you share a little bit about some of your entrepreneurial endeavors and how your degree in engineering prepared you for those?
So as I said, very early on, I loved building, creating, constructing. I started a company, and this was to support another entrepreneurial venture. But the company I started was Fortune Professional Services. I thought that fit pretty well. The timing was perfect, though, because this was when plasma TVs, LCD TVs were hitting the market. Everybody wanted one. They didn't understand the differences. They wanted it mounted on the wall. 5.1, 6.1, 7.1 surround sound, universal remotes. So I saw this opportunity. A lot of my friends at that point were in real estate. They were doing pretty well. So, of course, I could go to them and started growing a bit of a following. I had a profitable company moving forward. I was running the electrical, hiding the wires, going into attics, and I still have them. My wife always wonders what they're for, but the push rods where you could tape electrical wire, speaker wire, run that through drywall, and do full surround sound, mounting TVs on the wall, wiring it up to amplifiers, receivers. So if you wanted multi-room stereo as well. And then, of course, your universal remote. That is usually a continual thing because you have to update them or there's questions from customers when things change. But that was the perfect company because I was trying to start another company by the name of Thermal Impression. And basically all that is a thermochromic ink, heat-sensitive ink. And I created this for marketing. Also, I thought there could be a janitorial benefit where marketing-wise, first of all, cold beer, you may have seen Coors Light in the Blue Mountains. I was trying to get a patent. I can't say I taught them or introduced that to them or not, but nonetheless, this was something I was trying to do beforehand. But label it could come on a pizza box. So when the pizza delivers to your door, you could see something. It dynamically shows that this is a hot pizza. However, pizza or Pizza Hut or Domino's wanted to market that, but nonetheless, it's dynamic, it's changing, and it's saying something that it's a hot pizza. And it could actually change to another message where maybe you win something upon, the message cooling down. So really made a push on that. Majority of the money was spent for legal, trying to get a patent, and unfortunately was not successful there. But again, just that opportunity of taking on multiple different hats, understanding business plans, ROIs, submitting for patents is a wonderful experience. And fortunately, I had the income on the side to be able to support that and obviously to support myself.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, this leads into the next question I have, which is when you started out, you were doing sales. I mean, I think right out of college, your first job was doing sales, probably technical sales. How did you even know how to do sales right out of school?
I think like we talked about, or I mentioned and you did support as well, but when it comes to business, certain activities, you could pick it up as you go. And maybe there's personalities involved, obviously, when it comes to a sales individual compared to somebody that's not really as outgoing. One thing on a side note, just speaking of, being outgoing or comfort, is I actually do Toastmasters on the side, because we all maybe have a little bit of hesitancy or discomfort when it comes to speaking in public, where I've always wanted to face my fears. And Toastmasters has been an incredible opportunity for me, because it truly does require you to get up in front of people and speak. And then there's evaluations that are done afterwards. But going back to your question, I think just the excitement of working with a product and getting out in the field. And the companies I've worked with have required me to get out into the field, work in the operating room. I do come from two generations of physicians. So my grandfather and my father were both physicians. I think they're very happy I didn't go down that road, given our current healthcare system. Obviously, that's a much different conversation. But I've always been very interested in healthcare, medical, device type products, and just sort of grabbing the reins, jumping in, getting with the company, and getting thrown out in the field and just sort of sink or swim as it is with sales. Fortunately, I was able to really pick up on the product, separate myself, because I had that technical background and technical understanding that I think many other individual sales reps, as soon as a physician or somebody starts asking more of a technical question and that sales rep says, "Oh, let me get back to you," I was able to answer that question. I was able to have more success and create a stronger relationship, which really paid off with growing sales and my relationship with the company.
I think everyone should have a job in sales at some point, right? You just fake it till you make it, I guess, to some extent. But you learn some skills there that you'll use your entire life. I mean, we're all selling something at some point, no matter what job you have. And just being able to talk to people and communicate value about a proposition, it's so beneficial. Well, let me take a very short break here and share with everyone that teampipeline.us is where you can learn more about how we help medical device and other product engineering or manufacturing teams develop turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines to characterize, inspect, assemble, manufacture, and perform verification testing on your devices. Today, we're speaking with Mac Fortune. And you currently, Mac, work for a company called OrthoGrid Systems. What can you tell us about their technology?
So it was a dream of mine not too many years ago, where I was in plates and screws. I was selling medical device trauma products, rolled into imaging. So C-arms, fluoroscopes, I basically could call it an X-ray device. But I saw the way healthcare was going, where robotics, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, these new technologies were really on the cutting edge. Nothing against plates and screws and trauma, but the innovation is just being stifled there, I felt, where contracts, the healthcare system being consolidated, doctors not really having the power to ask for more innovative products, but money was being invested in robotics, artificial intelligence, augmented reality. So I reached out to this company named OrthoGrid end of last year, and fortunately just talking with them, working with them, expressing my strong desire and a skill set that I had, I was able to start with OrthoGrid a few months ago. And the core product of OrthoGrid is artificial intelligence, and it's technology that's used for a total hip. Now, people that maybe aren't as familiar with a total hip is basically a ball and socket joint. Now, when you go in to have a total hip performed, they cut off the ball, your femoral head, and then the acetabulum, which is the cup that the femoral head fits in, they actually remount to take out the cartilage that may have been diseased. Now, that's pretty straightforward, but the problem is the cup that you just reamed out, if you go too deep, if the angles are wrong, the femoral head, depending on how that is removed, you could change a patient's leg length. You could change the hip offset. Obviously, this has been a major complaint after surgery for many years, because if you don't put the components in correctly, well, now one patient's leg is a little shorter than the other. Obviously, you could imagine discomfort there. And for years, it's hard to believe, but it was really just eyeballing how these fit together, or there'd be multiple x-rays that are taken, and you'd have the preoperative x-ray and then x-ray intraoperative, where you put them on top of each other, line them up, see, okay, is this one right? Is it not right? As you can imagine, the accuracy of that method was not, very good. Where with the artificial intelligence platform we have, with a intraoperative x-ray, our artificial intelligence can pick up, autonomously without a sales representative or rad tech on key anatomical landmarks on your hip and then of your femur as well. So as you go through surgery and the doctor puts in a trial cup into your hip, our artificial intelligence, again, autonomously without any kind of user interaction, will see that there's a cup being implanted, and it will tell the doctor what the inclination is, what the version as well is, and then it can register the femur, what they call the lesser trochanter, compare that to the non-operative side, and very quickly it could tell you if there's any leg length discrepancies. So
Wow.
the best part is this system plugs right into existing hospital equipment, a C-arm, and it'll give the doctor very clear numbers, angles that they've not had before. And it's not as if they're having to interact with it. They're not having to go to another individual in the operating room to set this up. It's really giving them information for them to have a more accurate, more efficient outcome for their patients.
That's amazing. It almost feels archaic to do it without that kind of technology.
Yeah, I mean, that's where robotics and all these new technologies come into play. But as you said, and I truly believe in, my lifetime, X-ray or rad techs may not be around as much, where why not have a computer, artificial intelligence, deep learning? These are continually learning and improving programs where the more data you give it, the more accurate it could become. Where, no offense to radiologists, that they have their training, they've done their fellowship, and they read, a certain amount of x-rays. Well, there could be some subjective differences there compared to artificial intelligence, where it could take input and data from all over the world and can continually improve and evolve.
Yeah.
The way the world is changing. Obviously, I'm in the healthcare area, but it is fascinating to think about, the impact that artificial intelligence is going to have with patient outcomes and visits and things like that.
So you are a product manager there, and obviously you know the product very well, as you've been explaining here. What are some things that a product manager sees or experiences or observes that the engineering team may not fully appreciate, but that they really should know about? Have you seen any trends or patterns during your career?
I think this is an area where there's an incredible weakness, because the product manager does get out in the field. I was in the operating room for 2 days up in Utah a couple of weeks ago, where I'm seeing how the product works. I'm hearing what the customer is saying. I'm hearing the bad, the good, the bad, etc. Where the R&D team, they're the one that is creating the products, but they maybe, I would say, high majority of the time, don't see it being used. Obviously, in healthcare, there's a lot of red tape when it comes to regulatory vendor credentialing to get into the operating room. But I think an incredible weakness in my experience has been that the R&D team is not seeing how it works. They're only taking the input from sales, from product managers to build something, where smaller company, luckily a PhD on our R&D team is going into the operating room. But I'd say that is very infrequent where that is being done, where I think, that should be a change when it comes to many companies, especially healthcare, that the people building the product should see it being used, should hear from the customer, and not always rely on the input from sales or a product manager.
Yeah, big time. And it's amazing how easy it is for that not to happen, right? Yeah. Well, let's see. I've got maybe a few kind of general questions for you. In your experience, what are the top one or two things that you've seen slow down the speed of engineering?
Obviously, in healthcare, regulatory is a big part with anything we do. There's tons of red tape. We have to be very careful on claims that we make. So I think that's a big part of it. And then unfortunately, just the, not to speak so poorly on our healthcare system, but reimbursement and just the overall business environment of healthcare, innovation is being stifled, where the R&D department, the creation and innovation they're wanting to do is being stifled because the money may not be there in healthcare, where they're looking at spending money on other things that could create a longer term contract with the hospital, surgery center, etc., on a commodity type product compared to selling innovation. So I see it is sad to think about, but I could just see some of the engineering team, some of the development innovation being stifled because it's more business decisions frequently compared to the innovation. They're looking at purely the numbers and ways of saving money for some of our customers compared to offering innovative products to the physicians and the patient.
And you're saying that the business decisions may not always correlate with what's best for the patient?
At times, yes, because physicians now are employees of the healthcare system. They're not, private practice anymore, where it's about who has the contracts. Is it one of the big 5 orthopedic companies has a contract with Banner, Honor Health? Well, this is what you're using because we've got a good price for it. I hate to say. Yeah. Compared to the doctor saying, look, this is the cutting edge technology. It offers this unique construct. I really think this is a patient that needs this technology. A lot of the time, they don't have the will to fight that fight because it is a fight when it comes to reimbursement from insurance, when it comes to just the hospital contracts that they have in place. Yeah.
Well, maybe kind of a corollary to that first question, and this can be hypothetical, can be outside the realm of known physics even. What's a tool that doesn't exist now that you think if it did exist could dramatically increase the speed with which we do engineering or the efficiency, just make engineering easier, better, faster, cheaper, all of those things?
I would say, when you mention engineering, I'm going to relate that to innovation, product development, product design. And as we talked about earlier on, is the R&D team maybe not being in the field, understanding truly what's going on, how it's being used, hearing from the customer, the good, the bad, the ugly, where I would, again, just seeing what's going on, entrepreneurial side, augmented reality. There already is use of augmented reality when it comes to physician training. Well, why not help our R&D engineering team use augmented reality because of all the red tape, regulatory, vendor credentialing that I mentioned? Well, they're not on site. They're virtually on site. They're talking with the customer. They're using the system. They're maybe even training the physician or the circulator on how it works. I hate to say that the engineering teams are going to become the remote sales rep, but nonetheless, that could be a huge opportunity where let's get RD engineering team into the field using technology that is currently, being developed or already exists to help streamline innovation to help, reduce the headache and man hours, that iteration, one product, well, they send it out. No, that doesn't work. Let's send it back. That if you have that dialogue with a true R&D team directly with the customer, virtually just the efficiency of taking a product to market that's more in line with the features requests that, the market is asking for, that could be a wonderful opportunity.
That's a great idea. That's really interesting. I'm thinking about, I think it's Microsoft that makes this Halo product, Halo Lens or Halo headset, something like that, where it's just like what you're saying. It's a headset that people wear remotely, right, in two different locations. And I think one of the functionalities is one person can see what another person is doing. That's a really cool idea. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with augmented reality. I was very fortunate to use a headset that had been calibrated with a CT scan of a patient and work with this augmented reality headset looking at, it was actually a spine of a cadaver. And it was fascinating because you could view a spine three-dimensionally. And if you're putting a driver, a K-wire, if you looked at a spine, you have the pedicles, the little bony prominences, and frequently they're trying to put a drill and then a screw into a pedicle, where with augmented reality, you could three-dimensionally line up almost as if it's a scope with crosshairs that'll turn green when you have that trajectory perfect, and then just drive. So yeah, I really see a future of adoption with augmented reality. And as you can tell, I see it being used in many different areas, and just the efficiency it's offering and accuracy, not alone in surgery, but as we talked about with teams outside of the company, just for continual improvement.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. I've got a couple of really non-engineering, non-technical type questions that might sound a little odd in the context of an engineering podcast, but I think they're super interesting, and it helps us really dive into and understand the mind of an engineer. So the first one is, what's the most scared you've ever been? And feel free to take that from either a personal or a professional standpoint. And then, like, how did you handle the situation and what did you learn from it?
I probably have to say, working with a small company again, compared to some of the larger ones where you have in-house formal training, understanding of environment, OR environment, sterile environment. Working with a small company, I was pretty quickly thrown into the field and thrown into an operating room. So you can imagine the stress walking into an operating room where there's a sterile environment, there's personalities, the physician, you have the anesthesiologist, you're trying to stay out of the way, but then you want to have, I was working with medical equipment or imaging equipment at that point, where when they take an x-ray, they look at you. And I was sort of a deer in the headlights the first few times, just making sure I was using I knew how the equipment worked, but using the equipment in an operating room with sterile techniques, sterile environments and personalities and the patient, it was pretty nerve-wracking for at least the first handful of surgeries until
I bet.
You just become accustomed to that. It's probably not the best way of being trained. Obviously, that's changed quite a bit, but nonetheless, it's pretty hard to forget the first few.
I bet.
Alarms.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Yeah, you're brand new. Obviously, you've been trained on it, but like you said, not necessarily in an OR in a real live situation. And here are these very skilled, gifted, experienced, seasoned people looking to you for, hey, are we doing this right? And it's up to you, right? Yeah, I think so.
That's where the confidence comes into play.
There you go. Yeah.
You never lie or anything.
Right. Yeah.
But you don't want to look like, you don't want to show as scared as you truly are, maybe. Yeah. You have to be confident in what you know. Yeah. I knew the product. And if I had any questions in regards to how I was bringing it in to the sterile environment, obviously I'd ask that. But you still have to be confident, but then willing to ask the questions because you don't want to make a mistake. And I think a lot of people respect, that you are asking the question and making sure you are doing things in the right way for them and not just barging in, thinking you know it all.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, what is the best gift you ever gave someone?
That's a hard one. I think it's not anything I gave. I think it's just, with my wife and I worked together, starting a family. So I can't say obviously that was what I gave. It was working both of us, that opportunity, we currently have with 3 children. So that was more her than I. But in regards to just a gift, as you talked about, that's been one of the best ones that I could think of.
Great one. Love it. Love it. All right. Well, last question here, specifically within the context of engineering. What is one thing that frustrates you and one thing that brings you joy?
So again, the frustration and the nice part that has helped me quite a bit is my experience working in multiple different departments, such as sales management, project management, is with engineers, being looked at to get something done immediately. And that's from other departments because they think, well, just fix it, just build it. Where I think that could be improved quite a bit. And that's where somebody in the middle, like a project manager, a product manager, could help connect the dots, connect the departments from sales to engineering. Because I think, engineers, they've got a lot on their plate. And many other departments don't understand the testing, the verification, validation, the system requirement specs, everything that has to come into play for a product to be created. Sales, marketing, they just think, well, just build it, get it to me next week. So I think that's a frustration I've seen because there's got to be more collaboration between departments. And again, I keep going back to communication, but that's where it really is important for any company that they work together and there's understanding of how the different departments work, that we can't just expect engineers to get something done, next week, that there's so many other pieces that come into play just for them to create that product and release it. So that's frustration. I guess I'm more pointing that at our sales and marketing teams, but
what's something that brings you joy?
The joy would be the innovation, because I've been very lucky to work with smaller companies and I have shifted from trauma to imaging now to artificial intelligence, and just the fascination, joy, and ability to work with cutting edge technologies, to be able to continually challenge myself and learn new things. Obviously, mechanical engineers don't know or weren't trained on artificial intelligence. I've had to learn machine learning and deep learning and all these different terms. I'm never going to say I'm a software engineer, but just to have, again, I want to have that deeper understanding of the products I represent, and working with artificial intelligence, working with cutting edge technologies, it gives me that ability to always be learning and be a part of new technology, talk with physicians, patients at times on this technology, and just seeing, the look in their eyes that, wow, they see the benefit for not only themselves, but for their patients. That's really, one of the joys I think I've experienced in my career.
Yeah, wonderful. All right. Well, Mac, this has been a delight. How can people get in touch with you?
I would say probably the easiest way would be on LinkedIn. Please, connect with me on LinkedIn. If there's any questions or anything I could help with, by all means, shoot me a message.
Terrific. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much again for joining me on the show here, Mac. It's been great just talking about what a product manager is and getting to know you even better.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you for having me.
I'm Aaron Monker, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines, and with product design, visit us at teampipeline.us. Thanks for listening.